How many games are the Panthers going to win this fall? Y'all told me. I'll tell you what I think right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because tomorrow the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back in your lives every single Wednesday throughout the regular season. I'm on here on the show answering your mailbag questions. What you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for tomorrow's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're here. Week one, the countdown continues. Today is an off day for the Panthers back out there on the practice field. On Wednesday, we'll get a good idea of who's available heading into the week with the first injury report on Wednesday. Find more about that on Thursday. Friday, the final availability, and then they'll head down to Jacksonville on Saturday. Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, opening up the season there against the Jaguars. A big opportunity for the Panthers to get this season off the ground. Have not done that in recent years. My hope is, my prayers really, are that they're able to do that this year, get the season off the ground if they win in week one down there in Duval. So let's talk about my expectations, but also let's talk about your expectations for the Panthers this season. I put it out on Twitter on Sunday and on Blue Sky as well at Julian Council, just asking y'all what your expectations are. Because heading into every single season, I want to know how y'all feel so I can understand how to sometimes approach things. Because sometimes I might be a little bit more blunt than I need to be. And I want to, of course, be careful when talking about this team, because I know a lot of you can be sensitive, and I want to take care of your hearts here as far as this organization goes, even though I don't win or lose any of these games. And this team hasn't gone to the playoffs since 2017. They're 19-59 since I've been doing this show. So I don't know how I could ever be accused of being negative when all they do is lose. But I understand it's the NFL. It sells hope better than any league here in North America. So there's going to be hope every single year. But there's also going to be a wide range of emotions and feelings and expectations when looking at the Panthers every single year. In particular, this year, after the Super Bowl, everyone thought, oh yeah, they're going back, which, I mean, why would you not feel that way after looking at what that team did and getting a lot of those key pieces like Cam Newton back? Now, wide array of how people are feeling about this team because, well, they looked terrible to start off the year. Then they started to look better. And then it's like, oh, all right. Really encouraged about what you saw back in January in Atlanta, in particular from Bryce Young. And then you look at the offseason additions and you thought of, okay, time, age, experience. They're only going to get better with this young core. That has led to a multitude of thoughts, which I want to read some of the thoughts that people sent to me over on Twitter and on Blue Sky on Sunday when I put out the bat signal for y'all to tell me how you feel about this team. We'll start off Moritz, a guy out there in Germany. He says 8-9 will be good, but not feeling totally devastated in September/October will be much better. And I agree. Can you just get to November, December by still being in it and not start off 0-6 or 1-7 or 1-10, any of the nonsense that they've gone through the last couple of years? 8-9, I would certainly be happy with that, Moritz, in particular, if the season gets off the ground in September and in October. Joe says, as long as the Panthers are still in the hunt in the back third of the season and see notable improvements from key long-term players, and he would consider that a success. So again, they're in it. They're on the NBC Sunday Night Football graphic in the hunt. Plenty of teams who really aren't going to make the playoffs are on that graphic, but being on that graphic in November and in December would be progress. Brody, he says 7 wins. Last year, we were inches from being a 7-win team, given the Chuba fumble during the Bucs game and the Leggett drop in the end zone versus Philly. Hell, don't even blame Chuba. The defense has got to make a stop in that Bucs game. They couldn't do anything in that fourth quarter and in an overtime against Bucky Irving and the Bucs. And yes, the Leggett drop, tough, but to be in position 2 times late last season against those teams, and prior to that Bucs game and at Eagles game, they had the Chiefs on the rope. So certainly that was encouraging, and they were very close to winning all 3 of those games. 2 of them in Charlotte, 1 there in Philly. David, he says, I'll say 6-11. Don't have much faith in them until proven otherwise, which is completely fair. They have not been to the playoffs since 2017 and haven't really been in the hunt in a minute here. Alex, I don't know about winning a playoff game, but I expect us to win the division. So Alex is saying division, home playoff game for the first time since 2015 here in Charlotte. I guess technically 2016 is the calendar year, but 2015 season. We got Mia saying my optimistic side says the Panthers get 9+ wins. Her realistic prediction is 7-10 or 8-9. Someone who calls themselves just a guy over on Twitter said, I expect 5 wins. Bryce will take baby steps forward. The defense will continue to have significant problems stopping the run. Truth is, it's incredibly hard to reverse nearly a decade of absurdly poor football, which is true. Robert says 4-13, no names on the defense. Zach saying NFC feels deeper now. NFC East and NFC North get the wild card, so going to take a miracle to win the division. I think they win 7 games realistically, unfortunately. And yes, the NFC East, even with Micah Parsons now up in Green Bay in the NFC North, Dallas, as long as Dak Prescott's healthy, will be a team to worry about. And at least Carolina gets them here at Bank of America Stadium. You also look at the Eagles, just came off a Super Bowl. Washington, they're still going to be good. The Giants, who the hell knows? But the North, Minnesota, can't imagine they're like really going to be like significantly worse without Sam Darnold. Y'all know how I feel about Sam. And then Packers looking pretty good. Chicago, we'll see with Ben Johnson there. And then the Lions, can't imagine that drop-off is going to be precipitous after losing both their coordinators, Aaron Glenn, to the Jets as their head coach, and then Ben Johnson, aforementioned, headed to Chicago Bears. So those are y'all's expectations. For me, I'm going to go, and the majority of what I saw was about 7, 8, 9 wins. 10 on the highest side for the truly optimistic. But between 7, 8, and 9 wins feels like the right number. And I am kind of right there with David, who said 6-11. I'm not saying 6-11. Last year, I told y'all, what if they tripled their win total? They improved their win total by 3 games. They didn't triple it. They improved it by 3 games. So if this year they improved it by 3 games and got to 8-9, I feel like you should feel pretty good about that. And that would also mean that this team in December was in the hunt for a wild card, potentially this division. I do think that Tampa Bay is going to win the division. We talked about that on the NFC South preview that you would have seen here on YouTube and in your podcast feeds last week. I don't have Carolina winning division. Now, I do think that they absolutely are on par of Atlanta. And depending upon tiebreakers, they could be the team that finishes ahead of the Falcons in the pecking order this year. But I do not think Carolina is going to win the division. I do think that Bryce Young will continue to take steps forward off of what he did last season. I think the running back room with Chuba and with Rico Dowdle and with Trevor Etienne can be fantastic if given the opportunity to run the ball, and having everybody back on the offensive line is massive. Now we'll see heading into week 1 how healthy Ike Ekwonu will be, but the appendectomy is not something that's going to hold him back the entirety of the season, I don't think. And then with Damian Lewis, the shoulder, it's been an issue the last month, but it looks like he's headed towards being able to play come Sunday afternoon in Jacksonville. So that will be a good spot for them to be in. And at receiver, like, there's plenty of questions, obviously. Tedder McMillan's never played a game. My expectations for him are the same production that Marvin Harrison Jr. and that Rome Odunze had last year. I'm not expecting him to put up Malik Neighbors numbers, but I'm expecting him to be the top receiver on this team this year. He's that talented, and he's in a position to be that guy. I think Leggett will take a step forward this year. We'll see what Jalen Coker's able to do when he comes back, but I think he will be obviously a positive. Hunter Renfrow, still a big question mark, could be absolutely a big key for them. And even in the tight end room as well, Jatavion Sanders and some of those guys. So I do think the offense will take another step forward defensively. Derek Brown, J.C. Horn have to stay healthy. And really, you look at linebacker, cannot have an injury. Corner cannot have an injury. Safety probably can't have an injury. The depth there, it's just so thin, and you know they're going to have guys who miss time. And unfortunately, that has been the case the last couple of years. So for me, I have seen a lot of improvements. The culture is in a strong spot. The talent in the room, the youth of it all is all encouraging as far as where this thing is headed. But I am not ready to believe that this is a playoff team until I see them win some games. So for me, I can't predict a 10-win season. I can't predict winning division, getting to the wild card, because I've just seen so much bad, and I need to see more. I can't get over the way they started last year, and even when they were able to turn things around in the second half of the season, we saw the stinker against Dallas. We saw them get trounced on the road against Tampa. You will probably see, I think, more of the ups and downs as far as, okay, won a couple of games and had kind of a stinker. I think we'll see more of the second half of last season where they went 4-5 than we'll see what we saw in the first half of last year. So with that being said, I'm going to go 8-9 with this Panthers team. I think that they have a nice little win-loss kind of type of season, but they find themselves just on the outside looking in a competitive NFC outside of the wild card, and have a lot of good positive vibes and feelings heading into next offseason and then heading into 2026, where they're going to be looking at a chance at winning the division and, of course, gaining a wild card if that's what they have to settle for instead. So going with 8-9, I need to see it before believing that this team is going to be a team that is going to be a playoff team and then potentially even win playoff games here in 2025. So that's my thought. The Carolina Panthers will be 8-9 this season. And like Moritz, I'm hoping that they can just get the season off the ground. Bryce Young, awful week 1 and week 2 last year. Really encouraging the last half of last season. Will he carry over the momentum? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, Yahoo Fantasy is a load of fun ways to compete in brand new features that make the game even better. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many ways to compete. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics? Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. The 2024 season could not have started any worse for Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, as quite literally Bryce threw an interception on his very first pass attempt of the season. The Panthers were embarrassed down in New Orleans, both offensively because of Bryce's play and defensively, as they could not get off the field. Week 2, things did not get any better for Bryce and for the offense. And Dave Canales decided, after reviewing the film on that Monday, said that, nope, Bryce Young will not be our starting quarterback heading into that game on the road against Las Vegas. He went with Andy Dalton. And then the questions were, was it over for Bryce already in Carolina? Hand up. I thought it was. When you look at the fact that they had brought in all those new pieces, the new head coach, and just the way the owner has been in the past, not wanting to be patient with things. I thought that David Tepper had made the call and said, no, we're done here. Bryce is not the guy. We're moving on. Certainly should have considered that there was 15 more games left into the season, and that Carolina, with how poorly the defense is playing, that they likely were not going to be a good team, even if Andy Dalton played the same way he played against the Raiders every single week, because defensively that was not going to allow them to win a high-level amount of games, and eventually they were going to give Bryce another opportunity. Now, we don't know when that opportunity was going to come, because every single week Dave Canales told us that it was about Andy, it was about his improvement and all of that. Never talked about Bryce, never talked about what things were happening behind the scenes and about this being for his development. He said it was about the team, that benching him was the best thing for the team. Not the best thing for Bryce, not the best thing for the Panthers long-term organizationally at quarterback. It was the best thing for that 2024 edition of the Carolina Panthers. But then Andy got in a car accident with his wife, his kids, and their dog. Fortunately, they were all okay outside of Andy hurting his thumb on his throwing hand. So he could not play that game against Denver. Bryce came in, was all right, threw 2 picks, looked a little bit better in garbage time, but encouraging for some people. Then came back the next week, started again against New Orleans, and had one of the best games he had as a Carolina Panther up until that point in time. They won the next week in Germany. And then, as we know, the rest is history. And we head into this year wondering if Bryce can carry over the momentum that he ended the 2024 season with and really open up the 2025 calendar year with up on the road in Atlanta. Now, had Riley, a fan here of the show and of the Panthers, chime in when asking about the record that Carolina will have this season. And Riley had this to say, aside from the record, saying, I know it may be a hot take or one Panther fans don't want to hear or acknowledge, but this is still very much a prove-it year for Bryce. He played out of his mind at the end of last season, but I still don't think I can ignore how he started the year or played the year before. If he plays like he did at the end of the year, we have a franchise quarterback and are going to be contenders for the division every year. But if he plays at the beginning of last season, we're probably back in quarterback purgatory. And that is a great point that Riley made, and one that maybe you don't want to hear, but certainly is one that is valid, because when you look at it, Bryce has far more bad tape than he has good tape in his first 2 seasons as a starter in the NFL. You go back to 2023, how much of that is fair considering all that we know? Just what you saw, the receiving core was awful outside of Adam Thielen, who's now gone back home to Minnesota. The coaching staff that was dubbed as this all-star coaching staff, too many cooks in the kitchen, did not work at all, and he did not improve, and the fundamentals were not where they needed to be. They rushed him out there onto the field. Just a complete disaster in what Joe Person of The Athletic reported as a Hunger Games style culture within the coaching staff and the organization back in 2023. So that was not a conducive environment for your rookie to succeed. Now, we also knew that when you traded away Christian McCaffrey and then later DJ Moore to be able to get the assets to move up to get Bryce Young number 1 overall. Why give up the best running back in the NFL and then his number 1 receiver for a quarterback and then have no one for him to hand the ball off to or throw the ball to, aside from Adam Thielen, that season? So they never set him up for success. But the fact that he came out and looked as bad as he did the first couple weeks of the season was alarming. But understand, too, once he came back in, it's not like Dave Canales showed a ton of faith in him. The Denver game, didn't see any of it at all. You look also at the game against New Orleans. It took a minute for him to just let Bryce cut it loose. And when Bryce started to cut it loose, that's when we saw the Bama Bryce, the off-structure kind of things, the things that led Carolina back in 2023 to make that trade up to get him there on March 10th and then to draft him later on in April. So when you look back at last year, once he came back in to the lineup as a starting quarterback, weeks 8 through 18, he had the 6th best passing grade, according to Pro Football Focus, 12th best quarterback overall during that time. You take away from that Denver game and you go from week 9 to 18, starting off New Orleans and ending up Atlanta. He was the 5th best passer in the NFL, according to passing grade PFF, and then 6th overall quarterback among quarterbacks in the NFL during that period of time, behind Josh Allen, the MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson, who should have been the MVP of the league, Joe Burrow, the best quarterback in the league, quite possibly, not named Patrick Mahomes, of course, Justin Herbert, and Baker Mayfield. He was a top 5, top 6 quarterback, according to that. in the second half of the season once he got back in there. And once, most importantly, Dave Canales started trusting him. So if Dave can continue to trust Bryce and Bryce can get a good rapport with this young receiving core that's still pretty unproven, and the offensive line does what they did last year, and they really take some pressure off and run the damn ball, he should be able to carry over a lot of the momentum. Now, here's the one thing about it. And I know people get a little pretty carried away sometimes when they look at how a season ended and thinking, okay, things are going to carry over the next year. A lot of things change. So, yes, he ended last year on a high note, especially what we saw in Atlanta. What's not here anymore that was here? He no longer has Adam Thielen. He has a new receiver in Tedder McMillan he's never played really a game with. Xavier Legette's here right now, but Joan Coker, he's injured for the time being. So he has another receiver in Hunter Renfrow who he literally has never played in a game with. So a lot of new at a receiver for him to get used to in games. So do not ignore that at all. It is great that Austin Corbett's back in there, that this offensive line is the same, that you have the running backs that you had last year as far as Chuba Hubbard goes. So that's a continuity that's nice. But the receiving core and the passing game as a whole, I would not be surprised if there are little bumps early on in the season because, again, Adam Thielen's not here and Coker's not in the lineup at all right now. He's got two new guys to throw to and one guy who wasn't there at the end of last season because of injury in Xavier Legette. So just keep that in mind. I do think that we'll see more of what we saw in the second half of the season from Bryce this year than what we saw, in totality last year. Hard to say fully he carries over the momentum. I think he just builds off of a lot of the good principles that we saw at the end of last season and becomes a more consistent quarterback, more consistent passer, and a more consistent leader within that locker room and this organization. So I do think this will be a successful season for Bryce Young, but only time, of course, will tell. Now, Bryce, obviously, needs to play well, but there's a few X factors to look at heading into the season. I'll tell you what those three X factors are here on Locked On Panthers. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it fits however you like the bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Hey, Locked On Panther fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Obviously, we know that Bryce Young needs to play well for the Panthers to win this season. We also know that J.C. Horn needs to play well for the Panthers to win this season. Derek Brown, he also needs to play well for the Panthers to win this season. Those are three obvious guys who have to do their job. What about the X factors? Who are the guys that maybe we're not talking a lot about that if they perform at a high level, then Carolina takes that next step. It is right there exceeding my 8-win win total this season in 2025. The top X factor I have for this season, or at least the first I'm going to mention, maybe not the top, is JT Sanders. We spent a lot of time this offseason and training camp and preseason, and sure, it's my fault, I guess, since this is the show that I host and I choose the topics. But we spent a lot of time talking about the wide receiver core and whether they're going to keep 7, the talent, the depth, the youth of it all. We spent a lot of time talking about it. Right now, Adam Thielen, he's back home in Minnesota. Jalen Coker, unfortunately, starting off the season on IR, which means Tedder McMillan, Xavier Legette, Hunter Renfrow, David Moore, and company, Jimmy Horn Jr., let me go ahead and mention him as well, are a part of the 7-man group heading into week 1 against Jacksonville. And they're going to play a big piece of catching the ball from Bryce Young, of course, this season. But I did mention a moment ago when looking at the passing game heading into the year that do not be surprised based off of the receivers that Bryce is throwing to if there is a little of a bumpy start. Because the only guy he really has chemistry with in game is Xavier Legette. Hasn't played a game with Hunter Renfrow. Hasn't played with Tedder McMillan. But he has played with JT Sanders. And let's go back from weeks 4 to 12 last year. JT Sanders had a 61.6 PFF grade. He was the 47th out of 98 tight ends during that time. Had 26 receptions on 31 targets, 290 yards, and a touchdown. And he also really improved as a run blocker as he had a 74.3 run blocking grade. That was the 5th best at his position during that time, and a 64.9 pass blocking grade. One thing certainly that was concerning about him starting off last year because of the injuries to Ian Thomas and Tommy Trimble was his ability to be a solid run blocker. Well, he was able to do that midway through the season. And before that injury against Kansas City, he was ascending. He came back week 18 against Atlanta and looked like that guy he looked like from weeks 4 to 12 when he really got his sea legs under him and understood the pace and the speed of the game and became a key factor in this offense. I think heading into the season, he will be that. And I think throughout the season, he's going to be that. He was my favorite pick that Carolina made during his draft class in 2024 because they needed a tight end. They needed to find a true replacement to Greg Olsen. Tommy Trimble was not that and will not be that, which is totally fine because he still is a valuable piece of this organization. Ian Thomas, a survivor who apparently is on the 53 in Las Vegas, looked like it, but obviously did not turn out to be that. JT Sanders is. And what he's done with his body to lose weight, the nutrition, being a professional this offseason makes me even more confident and excited in his potential here this season and long-term in Carolina. So he, to me, is absolutely an X factor and someone we cannot forget about when talking about the pass game. Yes, we're talking about the young receivers and what they can add, but JT Sanders is also a key pass catcher in this offense, a guy who can be a safety valve and to be a big-time playmaker at that tight end position for Carolina this season. So he's an X factor I'm looking at this year. Defensively, on a defensive line in particular, I've talked about these guys plenty of times, Turk, Wharton, and Bobby Brown III. The depth and the talent at defensive tackle behind Derek Brown wasn't anywhere close to where it needed to be last year. It was not good enough. Shai Tuttle was not good enough. Sean Williams was not good enough. LeBron Ray was not good enough. Every single person who stepped up last year, not named Ashawn Robinson, was not good enough. So that was an area that Carolina needed to address this offseason. And they did that by going out there and spending a boatload of money on the first day of the league negotiating period on Turk, Wharton, and Bobby Brown III, much like they did the year prior when they spent a boatload of money on Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, also on the first day of the legal negotiating period. The difference is when you look back at the 2023 season, while yes, 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards, if Brady Christensen does not get hurt week 1, and of course, if you go back to week 18 the prior season, if Austin Corbett does not tear his ACL, if it's a meniscus instead, that offensive line is not that bad. You could make an argument that the issue on the offensive line that year was really the injuries and the lack of depth, not necessarily the talent. But yes, I do believe that Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt are a more talented group, a pairing there than Austin Corbett and Brady Christensen were back in 2022, and both those guys were healthy. And I also believe that the depth that we saw last season was obviously far greater than the depth that we saw during 2023 when Christensen and Corbett both went down for the season. So they still went out and spent the money. They didn't have the talent or the depth at defensive tackle. So they had no choice but to spend the money that they did on Turk, Wharton, and Bobby Brown III. You look at last year, you look at the continuity on the offensive line, the fact that those guys are even able to stay healthy, but also how well all of them played together collectively. If the Panthers can get the same kind of impact from Turk, Wharton, and Bobby Brown III that they got from Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt last year, they're going to be so much better on the defensive line. And that's where it starts. You can focus on linebacker, you can focus on corner, you can focus on safety, all of that. If you're not winning up front, you're not winning games. Football is a line of scrimmage game. We focus so much of our attention on the quarterback and all that other stuff, which matters, obviously. What did the quarterback do in 2023 when he was getting sacked 62 times? Not a damn thing. Now, was it all on the offensive line? Was it also on him? Of course. But if the offensive line stinks, the quarterback will stink. If the offensive line is good, the quarterback has a chance to be good. If the defensive line stinks, the defense will stink. Like, that's just how it's going to be. If you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything in this game, but in this league. Adding these two guys to rotate behind Derek and to also have Ashawn Robinson, a far better position they are defensive tackle-wise than they were a year ago. So Turk, Wharton, Bobby Brown III, they are X factors. Christian Roseboom is my final X factor this season. This is an organization known for its linebackers. The only player who has a statue is Sam Mills. And we know why Sam Mills has a statue. I mean, he's Pro Football Hall of Famer. What he means, keep pounding. The embodiment of what the Carolina Panthers are is because of Sam Mills and his heart, his legacy that he's left. But he was a linebacker. He started that tradition here in Carolina. Dan Morgan carried it over. John Beeson came in. Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, Shaq Thompson, who certainly is not what those guys were. But this has been an organization that has had great linebacker play. And last year really failed to even come close to that standard. Now, Josie Jewell, he's moved on. That was a surprise as Christian Roseboom has come in and he has taken on the role as wearing the green dot, the helmet communications on game day for Carolina at that middle linebacker spot. He's going to be there right next to Trevin Wallace, but he is somebody who's coming in and we're not quite so sure what Carolina is getting in him. He had a really good season statistically last year. Looking at PFF, they don't grade him out to be that great of a linebacker. But what will he be able to do for Carolina and helping to clean up things that they had issues with last year? I don't know what the expectation was for Christian Roseboom when he signed to Carolina with Josie and with Trevin Wallace already in this room. But the expectation now is very clear. He has to be an effective leader and communicator in the middle of that defense for Carolina to have the kind of success that they want to have at the linebacker spot and defensively overall this season. Yes, the guys up front are really important, paramount to his success, but he has to be able to pick them up when given the opportunity. And when they take on those double teams and ask the linebacker to come up and to clean things up, he has to do that. Trevin has to do it. But I'm really looking at Christian Roseboom, where if he can be a great communicator and he can stay healthy and he can play at a high level this year, that can completely change what that defense is able to do. And this is a spot where Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, Dave Canales, they've gone cheap at linebacker. They're not spending a lot of money at linebacker, and a lot of teams across the league are. It's not like they have a Fred Warner at all to be there in the middle of the defense for them, but they are leaning on Christian and on Trevin to be guys who can step up for them, even if they're not being highly paid or really highly thought of across the league at this point in time. So, yeah, Christian Roseboom is another X factor for me. If he plays well, he communicates well, this defense can be so much better than it was a year ago, of course. So JT Sanders, Turk Wharton, Bobby Brown III, Christian Roseboom, all four of those guys are X factors for me heading into the season for the Carolina Panthers. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast for our Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because tomorrow is the weekly Wednesday mailbag. At me, DM me over on Twitter and at me over on Blue Sky to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And again, I'll be back with y'all on Wednesday answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions.